Welcome to yet another extracurricular class. Today we're going to be taking a look at the arsenal of Batman. All of the upgrades that you will need in order to maximize your potential, and all of the new toys that you will get to play with. So, let's get started with the Gadget Tech upgrades. We'll start with the smoke pellet duration, which increases the duration of the smoke. This is actually quite useful for many Predator sequences, especially when you've got to deal with a lot of enemies and you just want to take out as many as possible when you don't have a fear takedown. The area of effect is also big too, because the more cover that you have, the more people you can take on and the more likely you are to escape. You can stun enemies for longer, and this one is big. Instantly incapacitating the nearest enemy when explosive gel is detonated. This is crucial because because if you take out enemies instantly with this is actually required for some medals. And, well, never hurts to have an extra way to take somebody down. We're going to very quickly move over to the Disruptor. Sabotaging the medic is an upgrade, which is crucial for certain missions. You need to be able to take out the medics in some fashion, and rendering them useless is a good way to do that. On the opposite end of the useful scale is sabotaging stun sticks, which, unfortunately, you won't be using too often, but it's a pretty cool thing that they brought back a way to counter the stun sticks with the Disruptor. You might want to try this in a combat map if you choose to get the setup going, but I wouldn't worry too much about that. Sabotage ammo is huge. Get the fourth charge means that you can sabotage more things, and you can actually disrupt two guns to explode in a challenge. Sabotaging the boa drone controller is in and of itself an upgrade. It's somewhat useful, but I personally would stick to actually using the remote hacking device instead. Next we have the increased range of the explosive gel. This is not a terrible idea to have, and I mean, if you're gonna get it, but I wouldn't worry too much about it unless you absolutely have to. The Drone Hack Mark II, this is for the remote hacking device, allowing you to blind drones for twice as long. This is another one of those things that's helpful, but not strictly necessary, because as far as I'm aware, there isn't really a time where you need to have the drone blinded for 60 seconds, but it never hurts. Sabotaging a drone, well, that doesn't really work, because there is no man versus drone technology, so in any of the combat challenges. If you're fighting the big drones, you're in the Batmobile. So sabotaging this is completely useless for challenge map upgrades, but for gameplay stuff, this could be really good. Next we have sabotaging mines. This is pretty useful when you have enemies that have planted a bunch of mines and want to get rid of them. Remember, though, that all sabotage disruptor uses take up one charge at least, so be mindful of that. Sabotaging the scanner is useful. I've used this multiple times. This is really good because dealing with the detective mode detector is not a terrible plan, because really you don't want to get spotted by these guys. So taking them out is pretty crucial and is useful for multiple challenges indeed. The Freeze Blast Proximity Mine is not a bad shout in and of itself. I don't use the mine function too much myself, but if you're the kind to set up traps, it certainly doesn't hurt. The Freeze Cluster is a fairly useful answer to this. I also don't use this too often, but if you need to freeze enemies in their place and quickly get away, this is not a bad shout. And of course, you can get the Proximity Mine upgrade for the Freeze Cluster as well if you need to cover your escape. The freeze duration is huge for this, because while it's not likely that a freeze blast is going to be needed in a predator scenario to last a particularly long time. In a combat situation, if you freeze somebody with a gun, or if you freeze a brute, then you don't have to deal with them until later on. The detective mode jammer needs to be, sabotage thing needs to be an upgrade, which is an upgrade I highly recommend, because permanently disabling a jammer is one of the best ways to get the jump on anybody in a predator challenge. Sabotaging a sentry gun dispenser is also marginally useful in and of itself. I say marginally useful because there aren't too many times where you have to worry about sentry guns, but if you can disrupt it, then disrupt it. Optic deflection armor, this is a really useful one. Disrupting optic deflection armor basically renders them visible, and they will never notice. So once you get this upgrade, you never really have to worry about the optic deflection guys ever again, if you don't want to. Now we move on to the next part. Gadget skills. A lot of these we're probably not going to need, but it's always good to come back and just review. Twin-aimed batarangs. This is the upgrade to take out 2 targets with the multi-batarangs, and its natural predecessor, ancestor? I don't know. The next step forward is the triple-aimed batarangs. These are actually pretty useful, because you can actually use the triple-aimed batarangs to get out of dodge in certain challenge situations, or just set up some ground takedowns. Next up are gadgets while gliding. This whole category is not all that useful, really, even in gameplay. I've never really found gadgets while gliding to be useful personally, but it is a pretty cute idea. Same with all of the others, including the Backclaw one, but it's worth noting that the Backclaw is ready as the last one. You have to use it as the last one. The remote electric charge and freeze blast, it's the same thing. Then you could choose up to 4 gadgets. But again, the entire gadgets while gliding category is not all that useful, in my personal opinion. Backclaw disarm firearm. This is one of the oldest tricks in the book and one of the most crucial. Seriously, disarming somebody with the Backclaw is critical to get some challenges done, and overall it's just a really good way to distract an enemy while you make your escape. It may be only 1 wing tech point, but that's because this is one of the earliest upgrades you should get. The increased stun duration is really helpful with aim batarangs, especially in conjunction with the triple aimed batarangs, which, remember, have a shorter knockdown time than a normal single aimed batarang. So using this in conjunction means that you can take out multiple enemies on the ground with your multi-batarang attack. Batarang combat damage allows the quickfire batarang to do greater damage. This is, I don't know if it's strictly necessary per se, but it never hurts to have extra damage on your key weapon. Then there's the remote-controlled reverse batarang. This is an upgrade that is actually pretty handy. You hit somebody from behind after locking on, and it distracts enemies, allowing you to get in from behind. Especially helpful on certain challenges where you can use this to knock enemies off of ledges, or for setting up a fear takedown. Next up, we're going to take a look at Batsuit Upgrades. First, we need to take a look at the Fear Multi-Takedown Upgrade. You will need this not only for certain challenges, in that you have to have the ×4 takedown upgrade in order to 3-star one of Batman's Predator challenges, but the more enemies you can take out with the Fear Takedown, the better off you are. Just keep in mind that the longer a Fear Takedown goes on with multiple assailants, the more likely you are to get pinged and your takedown is ruined. But if you plan it smartly, this is nigh universally beneficial. Especially when you go for the ultimate 5 takedowns, or 5-person takedown, which can actually be made up to 7 if you know what you're doing, in very niche situations. But this is still incredibly key in that you need to be able to do something like this in order to maximize your success rate of a particular Predator challenge that is quite difficult, and, well, just being able to take out as many enemies as possible with the Fear Takedown. The armor upgrades are essential because it means longer survivability, but at the same time, it's one of those things that you might not see the use of if you've ever watched any of my challenges, because I always try and do my challenges for my videos without taking a single hit. But if that is not any pressure that you want, which I fully understand, and you don't mind taking damage if it means succeeding in your challenge, then go ahead. Longer survivability never really hurts. The grapnel boost is never used in any of the combat challenges, but it is a essential tool for the traversal of the Gotham City map if you are playing in free roam just to screw around. Especially when you get to Mark IV, which launches Batman ridiculously high, allowing him to get some incredible movement across Gotham. This is one of those upgrades that is essential in the story mode, but has next to no use in the combat and the Predator mode challenges, or any of the challenges really. Shockwave attack is another one of those that you're really not going to be using too much, if at all. It's the shockwave attack. You need to get from a height and glide and dive down and then use the shockwave attack to floor a whole bunch of enemies. You're not going to get too many opportunities to even be able to land this, much less use it. The glide boost attack is also not a terribly common thing, but it is a little more common in that this is an enhanced version of your glide kick, allowing you to knock down multiple enemies. If you're going in for a glide kick on certain maps, you might want to use a glide boost attack instead to floor multiple enemies. And you can even instantly knock out your target if you somehow manage to fill it all the way, which is, again, very unlikely for most Predator challenges, but stranger things have happened. Next up, we're taking a look at these Batmobile upgrades. These will be pretty quick, but they are going to be worth mentioning for a little something something in the future. Now, this whole thing hinges on the fact that I'm not doing Predator challenges. I'm focusing on combat and Predator challenges. No Batmobile challenges of any kind, especially the races, which I am awful at. I cannot do races to save my life when it comes to most things, really. But at the same time, if you are somebody who wants to tackle the Batmobile challenges, and I'll admit I have been tempted to kind of come back to the tank challenges because, hey, blowing stuff up is fun. So we will be taking a look at these in particular, just as a quick honorable mention for challenges that I'm not going to be talking about for the rest of the Arkham Academy, but if it's something you're interested in, it's worth checking out. These are the weapons upgrades. So these are going to be the big things that you're going to be utilizing in combat challenges in tank mode. Extra accuracy on the Vulcan gun. Highly effective when targeting drones for critical shots. This is actually not bad. The Vulcan gun is your machine gun. This is going to be useful if you're going for critical shots, which is to say, if you basically hit the headlights of a drone, it'll automatically explode. I've never been very good at hitting these critical shots, but if you're friggin' dead shot, I say go for this one, because the more accurate you can get, the better. You can increase the amount of Batmobile's secondary energy gained from each enemy destroyed, meaning you can get to those sweet, super-powered weapons sooner. There's also emergency weapon energy, diverting all resources to the weapon systems if the Batmobile's armor drops to critical. So, if you're almost dead, you get a secondary boost. This will instantly charge up the secondary weapon energy to level 2 to power up the Batmobile to fight back. Now, admittedly, I'm not 100% sure, but this probably means that it just gets 2 levels. And since you can have up to 4 levels, if you're somehow able to get to this point, be almost on death's door, and then have the maximized rocket skill, or the maximized hack skill, you could be in for a ridiculously massive comeback. Completed Batmobile secondary weapon energy levels cannot be depleted regardless of the damage inflicted on the vehicle. This is the big one. I would recommend targeting this thing if you want to get any Batmobile upgrades, because nothing is worse than trying to prepare your special weapons only to get hit out of them, essentially. Next up is the Cobra Lure. Have you ever been frustrated by the Cobra cannon? This is for you. Shots from the 60mm cannon will distract the malicious Cobra drones to the location of the blast, which means that you can set up diversions and help set up your admittedly oxymoronic concept of tank stealth. Extra reload speed means that the 60mm cannon fires faster. This is another really good one that I recommend getting pretty early on. And there is a Mark II version of this, which maximizes reload time. The amount of damage caused by a direct shot to the chassis can go up with a 60mm cannon. This is another good thing to have, because taking out smaller drones faster never hurts. And if you happen to get a direct shot at the turret to do extra damage, this is another really good move to grab as well. So overall, these are much more utilitarian and actually useful than some of the other things we've talked about so far, but this is in a category that I'm not the greatest at. Now let's take a look at straight up Batmobile upgrades, just to knock these out. We have the armor level, increasing the health of the Batmobile. We have Super Eject, which you're not going to be using in any challenges at all, because it makes you leave the Batmobile, which I believe is an auto fail. But when you're moving around Gotham at speed, this is the most primo way of getting around, which is insane. Trust me, you can get some ludicrous amounts of glide time from this. Then you have the Afterburner Recharge. This increases the automatic recharge rate of the Afterburner to allow faster movement. Not terribly useful, at least in combat challenges, but for races, this is actually not a bad shout, because that means you can get your Afterburner faster. This is a big one. Getting the double dodge thrusters is key to moving out of the way of drone shots. Get this bad boy, and you shouldn't have to worry too much about certain drone shots in drone mode. And then there's Ram Charge. You're probably not going to be using this one too much, but if you move fast enough, you destroy drones. Meaning that you can use this as an offensive way when you're moving between the different zones in certain Batmobile combat challenges, even though Pursuit Mode leaves you more vulnerable to attack. So it's a give and take sort of thing. Now, let's take a look at our final section, the combat. First up, let's head straight on up. Critical strikes. Nab these. I'm not joking. Nab these. If you get in a good flow, critical strikes will literally double both the amount of damage that you deal with your strikes and the point multiplier that you get from landing these strikes, which is insanely useful when you need to just zip around and land as many hits as possible. If you've ever seen any Batman Arkham Knight or any Batman Arkham Combat videos and have wondered why are these people just zipping around doing critical strikes, doing these critical strikes gives you insane point boosts. That's why I was able to get over 1 million points with Azrael and 500,000 points with Batgirl in certain Predator challenges. I should also probably mention that most of the combat and gadget techniques, the free flow focus and things like critical strikes, will apply to all downloaded characters. So, at least as of a recent update. So, Batgirl and Red Hood now have access to critical strikes, even though in their base, in the modes where you play them as a base, you don't generally get that. Next up is the Special Combo Multi-Ground Takedown. This is an upgrade, and it's one of Batman and Azrael's unique takedowns. Utilize this bad boy to clear a whole lot of people on the ground, although I wouldn't actually use this unless you're trying to use it on a single or a couple of enemies that are not medics as a as a move that you used in the combo in order to maximize the amount of points that way, while giving the medics something to do in a combat challenge. This is kind of niche, but it doesn't hurt. If you're in one of those infinite challenges, though, this never hurts to just knock out up to... I've knocked out probably up to 8 guys at once doing this, and I will explain that sequence if anyone is interested. Special combo disarm and destroy. Grab this! Grab this! Grab this! I can't stress this enough. If you hate shields and guns as much as I do in a combat situation, then grab this, especially for the shields. Destroying the dangerous weapons that you have to worry about, fantastic. Granted, this is only applicable to Batman, Azrael, and Batgirl, but still, grab this! I can't stress this enough! Free Flow Focus Mark II increases the damage of attacks when this is full. This is not a bad shout, but I wouldn't actually prioritize this too much because, although I'm not 100% sure, I don't think this gives your critical strikes a ×3 multiplier. We'll see if that's truly the case or not. Blade Dodge Takedown. Get this. It's a bit tricky with some of the rhythm. This upgrade will be applied to all playable characters. Okay, so for some reason, it doesn't tell you on the critical strikes, but it does tell you on the blade dodge takedown. That's good to know, though. Generally, it'll tell you if it's applied to all playable characters, so that's nice to know. Trust me, though, this is a really good one if you want to maximize your point potential, and you're not afraid to risk things on a timing minigame. This is one of those upgrades that I personally think is absolutely critical for combat challenge success. Special combo back claw. Yes. This is okay, this is talking about the free flow focus stuff, so it's calling it special combo. That makes sense. This is your big back claw slam that staggers enemies. Very useful. Grab this. Same with the remote electric charge. Same with any of the special combo gadgets, really. These will apply to any characters that have them. So Nightwing has the remote electrical charge. This will apply. Batgirl has the back claw. This will apply to her. That kind of thing. Special combo Batarang will also work. Although not exactly in the same way that one might expect, in that with Batgirl it's only 1 Batarang as opposed to the 3 for Batman. Special combo boost. Absolutely critical. Getting a ×5, getting ×5 for your special combo moves instead of a ×8 is huge. Getting those moves sooner means that you have access to some of your most powerful tools sooner. Special combo explosive gel, also critical. Same with special combo freeze blast. Absolutely grab this. Weapon Steel Mark II? I wouldn't prioritize it personally, just because grabbing the melee weapon in and of itself is not a terribly common technique that I use. But if you like using the bats, or if you're just gunning for 3 stars and you don't really care about maximizing your score, I say go for it. Because this way you can actually use the bat for longer, especially if you want to beat up shield enemies. The Batmobile Assisted Takedown. I believe I talked about this in an earlier episode, but this is not something you're ever going to see, and I don't think it affects your tag combo boost, so it's not worth it. The Aerial Juggle is an upgrade. I would actually grab this because A, it's a 1 wing tech point, so it's super cheap. And 2, it's good for clearing space and having an extra move so that you can maximize your moves used multiplier never hurts. The Backclaw Super Stun is a similar sort of thing. It's cheap and it's damn effective, trading a hit from the Backclaw into a potential ground takedown later. Really handy if you have a weakened enemy that you don't want to risk taking out with a Backclaw Slam. You Backclaw Super Stun them instead to set up a critical beatdown or a ground takedown. And finally, the Charge Super Stun. I've never used this in a combat challenge, but it is one of those things that I wouldn't mind if you picked this one up, because I don't think it stops your combo thing while you're charging it, but I don't see why you would ever use this over just a normal triple stun. because the triple stun actually lets you stun enemies even if there's somebody coming up from the back. Super stun leaves you vulnerable to getting hit. Those are all of the main upgrades that I would personally recommend you take a look at. A quick recap for what I would prioritize. I would prioritize things that buff your gadgets and your combat skills, and deprioritize some of the things that you're realistically not going to see. Things like the sabotaging of stun sticks, or using combat as an example, the charge super stun. I would try and prioritize moves that you would actually use in the challenges first, and then move on to the rest. If instead you're not keen on the challenges and just want to grab all the upgrades, I mean, you're going to grab all the upgrades anyway, so I would still personally recommend prioritizing things like critical strikes and the blade dodge takedown over things like the charged super stun or weapon seal mark II. Hopefully this proves useful, and I'm going to actually hop off for the night because this is being recorded rather late before I should be turning in. Don't forget to be awesome, my friends, and hopefully these extracurricular lessons help you master your Batman Arkham skills, especially in Arkham.